Good Monday morning, everybody. It is Monday morning, November 9th, bright and early. I got my cup of coffee. And guys, you know what this week is? That's right here. It's Masters week. Big, big, big time week. Crazy to think it's the first week in November and we're rocking into the Masters, but this is where we're at. But I mean, this is just as a sports fan, this is one of the best weeks. I've had the opportunity, been lucky enough to have gone to the Masters. I've been to other big sport events. I've been to World Series. I've been to a Super Bowl. The Masters is unlike anything I've ever seen. And I'm not even that big of a golf fan, but it was the most fun I've ever had at a sporting event. So I'm ready. I got my Masters hat on. I got the shirt on. I'm ready for our Win Daily team here for a big week of PGA, and I'm excited for what we're going to have this week. But that being said, what I wanted to do was take a couple minutes this morning and go back through week 9 in the NFL. If you followed yesterday, it was a very, very nice week for picks and pivots. Had multiple top 25 and top 40 single entry GPP finishes, 10x my money easily, and it was a great day. And it was all laid out in the free picks and pivots article that I had written last week. I wanted to take some time and kind of look back at just my process, and talk a little bit through the roster construction. It's fresh in my mind, and I think it can help us as we go forward, and how we really start to build our lineups better, and get better week over week. And if you're part of the Win Daily family, you know that we are not here just about giving you the best plays. It's about making you better for the longer term. And this constant theme that we talk about here in picks and pivots is look back at the previous week. So let's do that now. It's Monday morning. Get your coffee. You got nowhere to go. Everyone's still in quarantine. My kids are homeschooling. This is life now. So let's do it. So if you look back, I want to look first back at, this was my article last week. And I highlighted the Millie Maker winner from last week, G. Hartman, and put up a monster score, had 244 points. This was in week 8. Right. And we talked about that roster construction being one where he went something very similar to what we've seen in previous weeks, which was a 3-1 passing stack. Right. So he had Mahomes with Robinson and Kelsey. There's his 3. He ran it back with Mims. Right. And there's his 3-1. And then he used some of the high dollar plays elsewhere. So we had Henry, Cook, Metcalf. And this is the theme that we've seen week over week. You're using multiple punts, 2 to 3 guys that are 4K or lower, right? And last week it was Mims, Robinson, and Bourne, right? So now I want to flip into this week and talk a little bit about how this week went. So this is my lineup. This is the one that I ended up playing. It scored 195 points. I'm a single entry guy. I played this in all the single entries. I ended up playing this in the Millie Maker as well. And it was a good week. I want to talk through a little bit about kind of my roster construction, look at, taking what I had learned back and what we kind of articulated in previous weeks, and then what I used in this week. So looking back at week 9, the biggest thing to me going into this week was trying to find the similar build where you could go more stars and scrubs, go high and low, and in doing that, it was trying to figure out what games made sense to pay up for. This is where, and I talked about this last week, if you go to our Win Daily page and you go to our NFL totals tool, this is the totals from last week, right? These are the adjusted expected team totals are going to be different from what you see from Vegas. They are adjusted based off our model for fantasy relevant scores. And for the second straight week, the Chiefs were the top adjusted total. And it's not going to surprise anyone, right? The Chiefs have arguably the best offense in the NFL. But what did surprise me was as you went throughout the week, there was almost just no focus on this game. You had the Panthers getting Christian McCaffrey back. There was buzz Sunday morning from Ian Rappaport that him and Mike Davis were going to split carries, and that ended up being totally laughable. But this game just seemed like it had the ability to really go nuts. And you had so many high dollar plays. Now, the tricky part was trying to find the cheapies to make it work. And so let's talk about that. So you'll look at, again, and I'm showing you this because we preach what we coach here, we follow what we coach here. And so my big thing going into this was always following the 3v1 stack, right? So I went into this week with the idea that I wanted to go with a Kansas City passing stack. And again, I went Mahomes, I used Hardman, and then down here I had Kelsey. What amazed me about this, and you could see it going all week. We were talking about it in Discord. I even talked about it in my article. The KC ownership was essentially nothing. You had Kelsey at 7%, Hardman at 5%, and Mahomes at 6%. So to get that cumulative stack for essentially 5% as a stack was just incredible. And, while there was the tricky part was making the value work, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, how did you run it back? There was a couple different ways you could have done that. When you look at how to do the KC passing stack, we talked about this. It starts with Mahomes and Kelsey. That was the 1-2 punch, and you started there. The second option with Watkins out, really, it came down to whether you wanted Hardman or you wanted Robinson. I ended up going with Hardman. I actually talked about here using Curtis Samuel and going with a little bit more of a 2v2. Kind of wish I had done that since Samuel went nuts. But nevertheless, this is the route that we went, right? It was a 3v1 passing stack, and who was the one? So on the Panthers side, I went with McCaffrey, and the logic behind that was very simple. KC has a really strong passing defense, and there was a lot of mouths to feed on the Carolina side. And I think you could have flipped a coin. You could have taken Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore. I liked Samuel for salary relief. But I ended up going McCaffrey because the way to attack Kansas City is through the ground. And I felt like he was also going to give us a game script that could potentially pay off in a big way. And it is exactly what happened. Carolina got the ball. They marched down the field. They operated at a slow pace, and they need to, right? You need to operate at that pace when you need to operate at that pace when you're playing an offense as dynamic as Kansas City. So they marched down the field. They got up early. They leaned on McCaffrey, and he was never scripted out of the game because, and you see it here, right? He had the rushing yards. He had the rushing touchdown, but he also had 10 receptions. So there was no way to script him out of the game, and I loved that. There were so many paths to get there, and we talk about this all the time. Think about how the paths to get there. McCaffrey is game script proof. He was going to get the rushing yards if they were up. He was going to get the passing yards if it was a negative game script. So that 3v1 stack made so much sense to me. So going with that route, that was really the low-owned piece, right? I talked about it. The KC part of it was about 5-6%, and McCaffrey himself was 6%. So you had this dynamic stack and that was able to really prop up my day and was at the anchor of, kind of everything that I did. And when it hit, it just pushed me up the cash position so quickly. And that was really where we started. Now, we talk about secondary stacks. So what did I do for a secondary stack? Dalvin Cook was the chalk, but I thought he was the right chalk. We argued it all week here. And I even brought this up in my article. When you talk GPPs, it's all about pivoting off maybe 2 to 3 spots. It's not about putting in 9 guys nobody's thought of. That's not what wins. And so eating the Dalvin Cook chalk was the right move. And, he was incredibly high owned, but there was a reason for it. But what I did with Cook was I tried to do a run back and give myself an opportunity to correlate. So what I did was I took Dalvin Cook, and I actually ended up using the Vikings defense against Detroit. With Galladay out, Stafford was banged up and hadn't really practiced within the COVID protocol. So I thought that this was a good opportunity, again, to think game script, to think Cook gets out, they get up a lead, Cook gets up and is running and running and running. The Vikings can pin their ears back because they know Detroit's passing. And that was really what ended up happening. Detroit was able to get some points, but largely that game script worked out, and that correlation worked. So how did we get there in terms of trying to find the cheapies? The very first thing that I did after kind of all this was, you realize you didn't have much salary left, so you had to operate in a pretty cost-effective environment. So Jerry Jeudy was somebody that our team here at Win Daily was on all week as one of the best both cash games and GPPs. And while they were talking him up, and I did see buzz about him around the industry, he did not nearly get to the ownership that I think he deserved, considering the price, considering the matchup. And he went bonkers. And so to get somebody like that at 4,700, that was an easy value play for me. Again, not trying to get overly cute there. I just took the path of least resistance, and I took a guy who had the target share, who had the matchup, and had the cheap price point, and plugged him in. Where I did then have to get a little wild was I had to use 2 3K guys. Now, it might seem like on the surface of that's silly or risky, especially as somebody who just plays one lineup. And this is not an MME build, right? This is not some optimizer. This was hand built, but there was logic behind it. So we knew Ridley was out for Atlanta. I liked the idea of going a little 1v1 kind of correlation with Judy. I figured if Denver was throwing and Atlanta was throwing, with Ridley out, Blake was going to take his place in the lineup. And while he didn't get there, and other guys, other secondary guys on Atlanta seemed to get more of the targets, the logic behind using him, was fine. And realistically, for his price point to get 6 fantasy points really didn't hurt me. And then I had to find one other cheap guy, and I went with Jalen Guyton. And originally, the logic for this one was Keenan Allen being out and or was questionable going into the day. But as the day went on, I really started to love the play more and more, even though I knew Keenan Allen was going to be in, because I figured this would be a pass-heavy game. And Guyton has been playing kind of under the radar an incredible amount of snaps. He's been at 80 to 90% snap count every single week. And even yesterday, he played 89% of the snaps. Now, granted, he had 1 catch. He only had 2 targets, but one of those targets was a bomb. And that's where I was going after. All it took was 1 catch. It was a bomb that him and Herbert just missed on. And had he caught that, he would have crushed. And it would have made my day massively different. To get a guy like that to go for 10 or 15 points at 1% ownership as a punt, would have really, when you start talking about, and I noticed it yesterday as I was jockeying for position in these single entries, when you get into the top 20 or 25 of these big single entries, 1 point either way can swing you hundreds and thousands of dollars. There was points in time where it was like, I would get, at the 1 o'clock games, especially, where the KC would get the ball and all of a sudden it was just like, you would shoot into the top 5, top 10, and then, they would give the ball back to Carolina and I would drop down a bit. So it was a fun sweat. It was a good time. But I wanted to walk through this and show you guys kind of the correlation. But what I want to do too is then go and look, because we do this every week. And I think it's really important, is to look at the Millie Maker winner. So this is a guy, and I tweeted this out last night. 1 sec. Need more coffee. I tweeted this out last night, and this is something that I found fascinating, was that this guy played 1 entry in the Millie Maker. And, for DFS players, and I'm one of them, and I think it's important to understand, everybody's different. There are people who like to do mass multi-entry. There are people who like to play more, cash games. I like playing GPPs. I like the fact that, I'll take my 10 or 20 bucks and throw it into the Millie Maker and you dream about winning it. To me, it's more about the entertainment. Hopefully you win some money. But it was great to see this. Somebody just threw in 20 bucks and walks away with $1 million. But, you look at how he built his lineup, and there was some similarities in terms of the trends that we've seen, the biggest being double punts. And I exclude defenses in that, because I'm just assuming defenses are almost always punts. But from a skill position player, they went again 2 players under 4K. The Davis and Jonnu Smith, both getting receiving touchdowns under 4K. They use the Jerry Jeudy value, right? But then it gets back to the stars and scrubs. Now they were able to pay up, and they got McCaffrey and they got Cook. You got Keenan Allen and McLaurin. So what was interesting, though, to me in this build is they really only did kind of a 2-man stack from Denver, which has been different from previous weeks. So they had Drew Lock and Judy together, which ended up being great correlation, very cheap correlation. But then they run a lot more one-offs. So it was definitely interesting to me to see that because you had McCaffrey, but you didn't have any KC run back. You had Dalvin Cook, you didn't have any Detroit run back. They had McLaurin, but then they actually used the Giants D. So there's a lot of uniqueness to this build, and it worked. But I think one of the things that I want people to get out of this video and get out of this look back is take time today. It's Monday, guys. Tonight's game, the Jets and the Patriots. I'm a Jets fan. It's horrendous. I don't even want to watch it. I don't really want to watch Joe Flacco and Frank Gore take on Cam Newton tonight. It's just like not super interesting to me. But from a DFS perspective, take today and use it to try and get better. Look back at what you did right, what other people did right, what did people do wrong. Adam has a great article out. He did a cash game week in review where he went position by position and broke it down. So head on over to Win Daily and take a look at that. But do it yourself. You take a look back at your builds and try and figure out what went right, what went wrong. But understanding these trends is going to be wildly important. And if you don't do this, I'm telling you, you're not going to get better as a player. If you just simply close the book and you think, all right, well, I either won or I lost, my week's over, I move on. Who are the top plays? I see this all the time in Discord. Sunday night, people are already saying, hey, look at next week. Love this game. Who are the top? Like, guys, stop. It's Monday. It's Sunday. Like, that now's not the time to look forward. NFL DFS is a different animal. You don't have to turn the page within a 24-hour period. You just don't. It's some of the benefits. It's some of the downside of it. You have a lot of time to over-tinker and outthink yourself. But use the time today, tomorrow, Wednesday, looking back at your lineup and trying to figure out what you did right and what you did wrong. And, use tools like we have here at Win Daily. You can come into Discord. You can get a 7-day free trial. It costs you nothing. Come in and join, and we coach you guys through this stuff. This is what we're here to do. Think through your lineups. We see it all the time. Lineups come in even leading up to games. Yesterday people were posting lineups and we were in there challenging people on what kind of correlation were you and what kind of game script were you thinking through. So make sure you guys take time to go do that. It is super important. It is a massive part of my process. I know it's a big thing that we talk here from the Win Daily staff is to go back and look. But it was a big week. I hope that you guys really, I hope that you listened. We had the Picks and Pivots was free last week. It'll be free again this week. We'll walk through kind of the same logic. And that KC Carolina stack last week paid off in a very big way. And hopefully we'll continue to have that big success. Stay tuned to Win Daily right here, my friends. Thursday morning, 6 a.m., PGA Lock. Our golf team is incredible. I am not a big PGA DFS guy, I will admit that, but Masters Week is different. And I am very happy that I had such a big week yesterday in week 9 of the NFL season, because now I got some serious bankroll to play with for this week. So thank you guys for checking this out. Head on over to Win Daily Sports. Grab that free trial. Our NFL season package right now is discounted for the rest of the year. It's under $80. It's $10 a week, right, for the rest of this year. And I'm telling you guys, you're not going to find a site that has a more committed staff and community than Win Daily. I've been around this industry for a long time, and I can tell you that very honestly. We have great content. We have great tools. We have great models. We have great projections. Frankly, so do a lot of other sites. What I think sets us apart is that our coaching is going to be there to help you with a personal touch that you're just not going to get at these other sites. So come talk to us. Let's help you out. Let's help us keep winning. And you know what? Enjoy this week, guys. Masters Monday. Have a good day.